Neo-Tigo Games!
Hey there folks, and welcome to Story Stripped Down, the show where we strip down the stories from movies, video games, and books to see what worked and what we can learn from them. I'm Drew from Neo-Tigo Games, and if you're interested in narrative structures and character development, please tap that follow button and join me on my learning journey. Tonight we're going back to the 90s, when movies were obnoxiously loud, violent, and cynical humor was all the rage. Which explains why I grew up the way I did, except for the part about being violent. Or does my predilection for playing Mortal Kombat count towards being violent? Anyway, The Last Boy Scout is a shining example of the quintessential 90s action movie, and there are so many bad guy characters that continue to live rent-free in my mind, despite appearing in only a single scene. And that's what we'll be looking into today. Memorable bad guys. The Last Boy Scout was released in 1991 and was written by Shane Black and Greg Hicks. It was directed by Tony Scott and stars Bruce Willis, Damon Wayans, Chelsea Field, and Taylor Negron as Milo the bad guy. As usual, this podcast will tackle you with spoilers, so please watch the movie first if you haven't already done so. Also, this being a 90s action movie, expect some of the audio clips to contain rough language.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you. You're gonna lose.
The Last Boy Scout is at its heart a buddy cop movie, and one half of the duo is Joe Hallenbach, a grumpy, down-on-his-luck private detective with a wife that's cheating with his best friend, a daughter that no longer respects him as a parent, and a car with a tape player that chews up cassette tapes. Joe lands a job protecting a woman named Corey, but he is unable to prevent her from being killed by professional thugs. Joe teams up with Corey's boyfriend Jimmy Dix, who's an ex-football player, and together they uncover a conspiracy involving a greedy football team owner, a sleazy senator, and a whole bunch of bad guys led by a sinister enforcer named Milo. Buddy cop movies live and die by the two lead characters, and the writers have provided us with a pair of memorable buddies in the form of Joe Hallenbach and Jimmy Dix. They are a wonderful pairing of a bitter and downtrodden detective and a young, energetic, and driven sidekick. Both of them have wonderful lines of dialogue throughout the movie that tell us just how quick-witted they are and how their friendship develops from their initial confrontation. It's actually a funny little scene where Jimmy tells Joe that he couldn't protect a cup of warm piss, and then Joe easily overpowers Jimmy and says this golden line.
Spilled my warm cup of piss.
But tons of movies have great protagonists and deuteragonist pairings. What makes Last Boy Scout shine is how the supporting bad guys also show up and go way harder than they really need to. Joe kills or defeats something like 20 bad guys during the course of the movie, and so many of these thugs are memorable enough to stay in your head, not just because of the way they look, but because of the dialogue and situation. This is a trait that not many movies have. Let's look at another Bruce Willis classic, Die Hard. And before we go on, I must stress that I love this movie to pieces too. Now, there are about 12 bad guys in Die Hard, but people really only remember Hans Gruber because Alan Rickman is amazing in this movie. If you're forced to think hard enough, you might also recall Theo the hacker guy because of his wisecracks, Carl, the big guy with long blonde hair, just because of the way he looks, and Uli, the only Asian guy in the bad guy team, played by fan favorite stuntman El Leong, with his recognizable facial hair and receding hairline. So after 12, you've got 4 that people can maybe remember. Scary intelligent guy with an accent, talkative hacker guy, tall guy with long blonde hair, and Asian guy with facial hair that you've seen before in a whole bunch of other movies. The rest of them can really only be described as generic bad guy that gets shot or blown up. And that's the big problem. You can't really describe most of the bad guys in any meaningful way. Compare this with Last Boy Scout, where you have a host of memorable bad guys. Milo is the most memorable, as he's the big bad leader. And he's also a sinister guy who is polite in a creepy way and calls everyone by their formal names. But he's not the only one, because there are also the Scrabble Man, the pimp-looking motherfucker of a hat, and the touch me again and I'll kill ya guy. A big difference between the thugs in Die Hard and Last Boy Scout is although the Last Boy Scout thugs aren't even named in the credits, you are still able to attach a label on them based on their mannerisms and situations, and that ultimately gives them character. Maybe not enough character to win Best Supporting Actor, but enough to earn a spot in your memory of 90s movies. You know, alongside Erika Eleniak popping out of a birthday cake in Under Siege. Neil Gaiman describes this technique as giving your characters funny hats. And essentially, it's about making your characters memorable through some form of unique quality. Most writers do that with their lead characters, but Shane Black put magic into the one-scene thugs in this movie. Let's see how.
Alright, man, just leave him the fuck alone.
Leave him alone, sure, whatever you say. Jake attacks his job with a certain exuberance.
Shit, we're being beat up by the inventor of Scrabble.
The first such thug is Scrabble Man. The character doesn't even have a name, but he doesn't need one. While his large companion brutally communicates with his fists, Scrabble Guy communicates through dialogue laden with lots of big words like untenable, exuberance, and a prize, finally leading to Jimmy quipping, "We're being beat up by the inventor of Scrabble." It's a funny line, but more importantly, the whole scene is built around this thug's vocabulary. Shane Black could have easily gotten away with two random bad guys whacking Joe and Jimmy in a straightforward manner, but he went above and beyond. The inclusion of the funny hat also doesn't cost much in terms of movie runtime, because the amount of dialogue would have been roughly the same with or without his extended vocabulary.
Last night I fucked your wife.
Oh, you did, huh? Well, how'd you know it was my wife?
She said her husband was a big pimp-looking motherfucker with a hat.
Oh, you real cool for a guy about to take a bullet.
After fucking your wife, I'll take two.
Next on my list is the big pimp-looking motherfucker of a hat, another otherwise unnamed thug. He appears in a scene where he takes Joe to a side alley with the intent to execute him. Unlike Scrabble Man, Pimp with a Hat doesn't dominate the scene with unusual dialogue or a personality quirk. He's just a big guy who wears a literal hat, and not a particularly funny hat either. His physical appearance could have been easily overlooked if Joe didn't call attention to it with a joke. In fact, it's Joe who dominates the scene with a barrage of jokes about having sexual relations with this guy's wife, culminating in a different set of jokes about her large size. Pimp with a Hat is merely a foil in this scene, but he allowed Joe's character to deliver some great lines. By allowing Joe to shine, this whole scene shines, and because this scene shines, Pimp with a Hat shines too. In marketing, it's called the halo effect.
I'm gonna need a light. If you touch me again, I'll kill you.
Boom bash, baby!
Oh, baby! 2 for 2. We got a 2 for 2. Told you.
The final thug we're going to look at is Touch Me Again and I'll Kill You Guy. Unlike the other two, this guy actually has a name, though he only gets named after he dies. But because Touch Me Again and I'll Kill You Guy is such a mouthful, I'm going to refer to him by his official name, Chet. When Joe is captured by the bad guys, he asks for a cigarette and Chet gives him one. When Joe asks for a light, Chet pretends to help light his cigarette before punching Joe in the face. Chet then starts laughing smugly and proclaims that Joe isn't so tough after all. Now, he does this in a really annoying manner by dancing around and calling people baby, and while you're not supposed to like any of the bad guys, you dislike this one even more than usual. Joe asks for another cigarette and another light, and this time he adds the killer line,
If you touch me again, I'll kill you.
Chet proceeds to punch Joe again, and while he's gleefully celebrating like a smug prick, Joe brutally lashes out and punches Chet's nose into his brain. It's a painful death, And while it would cause most viewers to wince at the brutality, you're also kinda cheering on because that noisy douchebag has been permanently silenced. This entire sequence is set up to remind the audience how dangerous and well-trained Joe is, and it's built around this one menacing line, "Touch me again and I'll kill ya." Just saying it gives me the chills, and this line came out 3 whole years before Quentin Tarantino's "Say what? One more time." Just because your supporting characters only appear in a single scene and have very functional roles doesn't mean you don't need to give them more character. Give them an unusual speech quirk, like an extensive vocabulary or a phrase or buzzword that they regularly use. Make them part of a punchline, or pump up the volume on a particular trait, like maybe they're excessively polite, or ridiculously annoying, dumb, sweet, or obsessed with volleyball. A little bit of character goes a long way to improve the memorability of your story. One other thing I'd like to call out about The Last Boy Scout is the way Shane Black seeds multiple lines into the early part of the story and then twists them later for dramatic effect. Here's an example where Joe's friend Mike is describing his client Corey using a unique scale of measurement.
She rates a 3 on my finger scale.
That means I'd cut off 3 of my fingers if God had let me fuck her.
A couple of scenes later, when Joe catches his wife cheating on him with Mike, Joe gets to twist the line back at him.
Keeping it warm for me, Mike?
Easy. Don't do nothing dumb.
How was she? On your finger scale, how was my wife?
It's not exactly a new storytelling tactic, but Shane Black does it quite well in this movie. Having characters use recurring catchphrases creates continuity in TV shows, like how Robin in the old Batman series would exclaim, "Holy fireworks, Batman!" or "Holy mashed potatoes, Batman!" But in a movie, it can be a quick setup for a delayed payoff later for the character. Like Jimmy. Jimmy has a unique way of drinking shots by toasting to Alex the astronaut or Alex the accountant. He does this 3 times in the movie, and on the 3rd time, Joe asks him, "Who's Alex?" setting up Jimmy's tragic backstory where his newborn son Alex died before ever getting a chance to grow up and be somebody. Joe, on the other hand, has this phrase that he likes to use to deliver cynical nuggets of truth by saying something like, "Water's wet, sky's blue, women have secrets." Later, he twists it into something more dramatic with, "I wish water wasn't wet, I wish the sky wasn't blue, I wish I still didn't love my wife." This repetition of phrases not only builds continuity of character, but it can also be used for dramatic effect. Just remember to do it 3 times, twice to set it up, and the 3rd occurrence includes the twist. I totally stole this technique in Gloom and Doom, where I had the Gloom character repeatedly downplay insults by saying,
Been called worse.
whenever someone calls him an asshole or something, and then finally at the end, when Winona called him a coward, he instinctively starts to say his line, but stops and admits to himself that this one really hurt by saying,
Been called? No, wait. That is the worst thing I've ever been called.
Okay, let's sum up what I've learned from The Last Boy Scout. 1. Every supporting character can get their time in the limelight if you give them a unique trait, like an unusual speech pattern or being part of a funny gag. 2. Getting your characters to repeat certain phrases gives them continuity, bonus points for setting up the catchphrase and then twisting it later for an unexpected dramatic turn. 3. Friday night's a great night for football. Thank you for listening to Story Stripped Down. If you enjoy the way I dive into stories, please tap that follow button and get notified every time a new episode drops. Plus, it makes me feel a whole lot better and prevents me from doing the Joe Hollenbach routine of looking into a mirror and saying, "Nobody likes you." I'd love to know what you think about The Last Boy Scout, so please drop a comment with your thoughts on the story. In next week's episode, I'm going to look at Strange Buildings, the new book from best-selling Japanese author Uketsu, and possibly one of the most stripped-down books I've ever read. This episode of Story Stripped Down is written, produced, and hosted by me, Drew Pan. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on X as NeoTeagle Games. That's NeoTeoelGames. You can also find my game Gloom and Doom on Steam and all major consoles. It's a horror comedy visual novel about an ancient wraith and a teenage antichrist trying to prevent the apocalypse. If horror fantasy is not your thing, try my comedy novel, Toxic Boss Fight, available on Amazon. This one's about office politics and the quest to find meaning at work. Take care, everyone. Keep on reading and writing.